when you wrap everything inside like we have here, it means, you know, the image is going to stretch to the background of all these components and whatever height they accumulate to. So say they all get merged together in terms of the DOM elements on the page and they equate to 2000 pixels in height, it's going to stretch to 2000 pixels in height. Now that's not something we want. So what we do want is, let's just do a quick test. We'll just say hello. And then we can use this here as like a opt-in form, which is what we used before. There we are. So we have somewhat of a header, right? So now we need a feature, but we do have the opt form. So let's just dump that in there for now, because that would mean that we can pretty much use the opt form to get some height. So set opt form from components, and then we can take out hello. Then we can just say opt form. Did we use the opt form somewhere else? I'm sure, yeah, we used it on the FAQs, right? Okay, so just copy this. So FAQs, which is FAQs container, which lives inside the containers folder, copy this from the bottom that we built and paste it in there. Ooh, reusable components, nice. Okay, so the next one would be a feature. So the feature is this bit here where you expect to see unlimited films, TV programs and more. Watch anytime, cancel at any time. Now that'd be good if we, well, it seems like a small component. You have a title, subtitle, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it really. Yeah, so that's gonna be a small one. We can pretty much just build it here. So feature, we're gonna build it into a component, but this is probably what it's gonna be. Feature.title, unlimited films, TV programs, and more. And then feature.subtitle, watch anywhere, cancel at any time. And we can pull it out of components, so we can call it feature. And then if we go into components, we do need to create a new folder called feature, index.js, styles, then call that feature.js. And then of course, remember to add it into index.js. So we can call this feature. Go in there and set feature. And we can start building out feature. So the feature is, like I said, going to be fairly simple when we've got like two things. So what we in here, go into source components feature index.js. I'll import React. Import, let's say we'll need a container, which we do for everything, a title and a subtitle. That's pretty much what we need, right? If we look at what we just talked about, the unlimited films, TV series, that sort of stuff, and do export default. Now, do I have export default set up? Yeah, I do. There we are. So that's a nice little snippet. And again, that is I have a video on that, and there's also in the description, there should be a link to that. So let's return a container. Rest props, children. And then feature.title equals function feature title. Maybe I should have a snippet set up for that as well. That'd be nice, because you do tend to type this quite a lot, or at least I do. But then again, we are doing this in one sitting or two sittings or three, whatever it may be. If you're using this at your job, you probably won't be typing this much, because this is a lot of work. Let's see, get rid of the title, subtitle, and we'll call this one subtitle 2. Well, call it subtitle as well. So if we jump into feature here, you know the routine by now. Import styled from styled component / macro. Export const container, which is going to be a div as always. Export const title, which will be, can you guess? Style.h1. Subtitle, style.h2. Okay, so I guess the title and subtitle are going to be somewhat similar in terms of the color's definitely going to be the same. 640, would 640, 650 maybe, 640. Let's do font size, font weight 500, and we'll center it with margin auto. And then the media query of max width 600 pixels up to 600. We want it to be 35. Let's just copy this because I know people are probably sick of the CSS by now. So max width font size. So it's looking somewhat okay. Let's put it to 26. Font weight we'll put to normal, and then I'll give it 16 margin. And then we can use 18 pixels. Is that not going to center? Why? You'd expect it, sir. Oh, let's manage that within the container. So we can say display flex. Let's see what we get from that. Okay, so now we need to make sure the direction is column based. Border bottom. Do you remember when we used the border bottom 8 pixels solid 2222 for these here? So for each jumbotron there's a border bottom. We just want to follow that. And then to get that in the middle, text align center, padding 165, 45. And there we are, a nice looking feature. Now I feel like the opt form is too low. Or maybe that's just me. Let's see how the design looks. Yeah, it's way too low. Why is it that far down? What did I mess up on here? Solid. Okay. That was wrong. Make sure you just say solid for that one. It's still far too low. I mean, the majority of it looks correct. And it has to be, so there's a feature container and there's a feature header. The container itself, it's this margin. But then you get rid of the, well, it pushes it down, which is probably not what you want. Maybe? Does that make sense? I don't think that makes sense to have it that far down. So let's just see what's going on in our container. Maybe there's something we can fiddle about with in there. So let's see, feature, home, is it home? Oh, I know what we can do. Let's shove this opt form inside the feature. There we go, much better. Much better. So make sure the opt form goes inside the feature and then you get the padding at the bottom, which is nice. Then you have a nice looking, let's have a look, Netflix homepage. So something that's caught my eye is these seem fairly small. Let's have a look how Netflix do it. Actually, maybe we should just take some initiative and move them a bit. So what they're currently sat at there. So max width, let's put that to 700. Yeah, 700 seems better. So let's open up the accordion. Accordion / styles. Then item, put that to 700. And it kind of matches up, does it? Yeah, it kind of does. Okay, that looks good. Let's just review. So we have FAQs. Yes. We have a header. Do we have the border? We do. That's nice. We have the sign in. So the sign in, maybe I should make that a bit bigger. I'm not too sure. What does everyone think? Should we make the sign in button bigger? I mean, I'm not too sure Netflix do. But yeah, that's the Netflix homepage. So well done. We have created the Netflix homepage. And we use reusable components as well. So the next thing we'd want to do is, what should we focus on next? I feel like we should start getting the data for Firebase. I think that would be a good plan. Let's close all this down. If you have errors or for some reason something's not working, go ahead, check the GitHub, compare your files with mine, see what's going on. And at this point, I think it's good, probably a good idea that we start looking at the Firebase connection. So how we can hook this up to Firebase. So we do need to set up Firebase, which is jumping out of Visual Studio Code, going to Firebase console. So if you just type Firebase in Google, that should come up. And then there is some work to be done in here. So firstly, what you need to do, I'm going to create a folder called lib. Then I'm going to create firebase.prod.js. And the reason I've called it .prod is because this is going to be our production version. And essentially you can have a local version as well, but we're just going to go for the production version. And what you want to do initially, just before we do any sort of configuration within Firebase console, import Firebase from Firebase app. And then we are going to be using the Firestore. So we want Firebase/Firestore. And then we want Firebase auth because we're going to be using Firebase for authentication. And then here, we need to somehow seed the database. And then below it, you're going to have a config. So the config is going to have a bunch of keys, which you can get from Firebase. So let's not just get them now. We need a config here. And then we'll say const Firebase equals Firebase.initialize app. And we'll pass in our config. Right now, let's just say const config equals an empty object. And then we can export this as well. So we'll export this Firebase because we want to use it at the top of our application. So just to reiterate what's going on, we've created a folder called lib. We've created a file called firebase.prod.js. We've done some initial Firebase boilerplate. So I think that's pretty good for now. Next, I think what we need to do is we do have to go look at how we can use Firebase from the Firebase console, how we can hook it up to our application, and then how we can, get a connection from our application to Firebase. So let's go ahead and do that now. Right, so once you have gone to console.firebase.google.com, you'll be presented with this page. You can just type Firebase into Google and it will come up. Google do own Firebase. I'm sure they're not going to be ranking this very low down the search results. So once you're on this, zoom in. I don't think it's that important to have the VS Code open at the moment, but you'll see your Firebase projects. Now you may not have any. If you do, then you should be used to Firebase, and it's fairly simple to set up. Click add project. We'll call this one Netflix YouTube, and I'm gonna disable Google Analytics, hit create project, and then just goes ahead and creates it. It's fairly simple to set up, and this is why Firebase is so good. Like these lightweight services where you can just run databases and authentication. This is the future of web development. It's not creating your own authentication layer. And there we are. Project is ready. Perfect. And it'll take you into this. Now, on the left side, you have a bunch of different options. You can have the real-time database, which is pretty cool. I use it on the Todoist clone, so do check that out. Or you can have Cloud Firestore. So go ahead and click on Cloud Firestore. Once you've clicked on that, you'll be presented with this screen here, and then click Create Database. Now, this is something we're going to come back to shortly, the database roles. We can start it in test mode, which is fine. So say anyone with your database reference will be able to view, edit, and delete your data from your database basically in 30 days. And that's fine for now. Let's start in, start in test mode for now, because we do have to seed the database with some data. So after you've set this location, you cannot change it. So set it to wherever you're based. I'm going to say Europe West. Is that what I'm going to do? Yeah, Europe West. Hit enable, and now it should provision basically the Firestore, which is going to allow us to access our data. Now, we won't have any data in there to begin with, but again, if we go back to the repo, go into source, and then go into, let's see, seed.js. So we have to jump back into VS Code now, whilst Firebase is provisioning our database. Once you're in source, create a new file called seed.js. Once you've done that, you have to be very careful. So you'll see this file here, seed.js, and click on raw and copy all of this. So don't worry if you can't see it, I cannot see it either. Just do Command or Control A, then hit Command or Control C, copy, and then come into seed.js, which is inside source, paste that in there. Cool, so you'll have this file. I'll just quickly run you through this. It's basically just a bunch of inserts. We have a UID here to create the UID, which is what we're going to be using for our Firebase ID. And then you have, as you can see, fairly descriptive collections that are going to exist within, well, fairly simple documents that are going to exist within a certain collection. This collection is a series. And if you scroll down, you'll see films somewhere. Yeah, there you go, films. So we're going to have two different collections, one for films, one for series. And it has the title, description, genre, maturity, and slug. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're just going to seed this with maybe 60 initial points of data. The reason I gave you this because, you know, look, we're at nearly 500 lines. You don't want to be typing this out. I typed it all out and took about 2 years off my life. So you don't want to be doing that. You can close down this now if you've got the seed file. And there we go, we have a collection. So how do we get that data into our Firestore? Well, as you can see, it's empty at the minute. The rules is currently in test, as you can see here. It's basically saying 30 days from now, it's going to basically turn it to production where you can't insert anything. And that's fine for now. What we want, and I can't quite remember how you get the, let's have a look. Settings, project settings. There is a way, integration maybe? Nope, that's not it. Go into the Firestore. We're looking now for the, basically the details. I'm just clicking everywhere at this point. Where the hell are the details? Project settings maybe again. So Netflix, YouTube, project ID, project name, that's fine. Support email, server key. By the way, I will be deleting this, so whatever details you do see, don't worry, they're going. Here we go. This is it, I think. That's the admin SDK. We don't want that. Where is this? Database secrets? Come on. Nope. Ah, that's frustrating. Let me see. Let me see where these are stored. I do have some notes on this because I always seem to lose it. So I'm just going to jump into my notes quickly. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to jump into my notes quickly because I'm going to open up Notion, but I can't show you this because it has some of my private details in. I think I know where it is. Click on Firestore, Project Overview, here. So click on Project Overview, then add an app to get started. So click on Web. We have to register one for web, and we can call this, let's call it Netflix YouTube again. Hosting can be set up later. No, it's strange that you got to register an application after you've already registered the Firestore. Maybe I just don't understand it fully. So anyhow, you'll get to this bit here. So add the Firebase SDK. So ignore this bit, ignore basically everything apart from this bit right here. And I'm just going to put this onto the screen as large as I possibly can, this bit here. Yes, you can use my details, but I am going to be deleting this Firebase Firestore on this project once this is published because I don't trust people. I don't want you to be running me a huge bill on Firebase. It is currently free, I think, to 50,000 queries a day, and we're never going to hit that. Paste those details in here inside the config. Cool. So next, what we want to do, I just want to be a bit careful about this bit, because if we jump back over to continue to the console, go back to the Cloud Firestore, not the real-time one, click on Cloud Firestore. Don't know why it took me to the, was that link wrong, or was I just being, I think the link was wrong. So you see this is empty, and now we have to get data in here. So the way to do this is you want to import that seed file, and you only want to do this one time, or it's going to add duplicate data. So it says seed file from seed, and once I've done this, I'm just going to delete that file because I don't trust that I will not run this multiple times and then have to go in and empty the Firestore, and it's just chaos. So once you've done that, go down here, seed database, Firebase. Okay, get a good look at that. We'll clean it up, and I'll hit save on that. Now I haven't called this anywhere just yet, and this is where we do have to be extra careful. So now let's just take a breather a second. You're not going to see anything happening in terms of on the application. What's going to happen is if we go ahead now and jump into index.js, I'm basically just going to say import Firebase from lib firebase.prod, and you can see I haven't hit save yet because you've got this little white icon. When I hit save, we are getting into dangerous territory because we are exporting Firebase here. Now granted, we haven't called this, but watch what happens when I hit save. So that's going to refresh, or I thought it would have done. Let's see. There it is, it's refreshed. And then we need to call Firebase, because once we call Firebase, no, we don't even have to call Firebase because I've imported it, and it's the did I export? Yeah, I exported it, so we didn't even have to call it, because once that import's done, it's already going to call Firebase. Firebase is going to go here, initialize the application with a config, and then when it gets to the second line in terms of these two, the seed is going to take place. Now uncomment that out immediately because you don't want that to happen. If I run that one more time or hit save again or refresh, you're going to get duplicate data. Did I? Hopefully didn't. Yeah, I didn't. Look, there's no duplicate data in here. This is the amount you should be expecting. Cool. It's always scary when you get to the point of seeding the database. Now I'm just going to get rid of that because I just don't want to risk even accidentally uncommenting it. So now we have Firebase. We don't have any sort of context, to connect Firebase around our application. So I think we should do that now. We want a Firebase provider because we're going to be using the Firebase. Are we going to be using Firebase context any further? Do we need a context here to basically float around? Well, yes, because we're going to need it on the browse page. So if everything gets rendered through here, basically we can say Firebase context dot provider equals value, not equals value, value equals, it's getting late. I should continue this tomorrow because I'm making some mistakes. Okay, so put this here. Doesn't exist. Right, good. Go ahead and create a new folder called context. Now I like to keep all my initializations in a folder called context, because that means I can just call context wherever in the application if I want to go ahead and either consume that or do something with it. We'll call that firebase.js, and we'll say input create context from React, then export const firebase context equals create context, and just initialize that with null. Okay, so now that's initialized with null. You see you get the red squigglies again. VS Code doesn't pick it up, but if I just hit delete, well, no, yeah, I can tell I'm getting a bit tired. What we want to do, we don't want to import the context, so let's say firebase context from context firebase. Cool, so now we have our application wrapped within the firebase context, and if we take a look, I don't use the React dev tools that much in all honesty, but I feel like this would be a good example if they work. Components, there we are. We have the router.provider, which is React router. Then if you come a bit further down, we should have the context somewhere. Firebase, maybe not. What did we render that in? The app, right? Oh, here it is, context.provider. And if you look inside the value, you have Firebase. Cool. Now, how do we get data out of there? Well, we don't really want to get data just yet, right? I mean, we can, but I feel like we should wait because we need to get to the browse page. We also need to do authentication. Once we get to the browse page, that's a good example as to, here we are, this is all your data. But right now we've done the feature, we've hooked our application up to Firebase, we've connected to Firebase. I feel like we should work on the form now so we can do sign in and sign up. And then after that, we'll be looking at the browse page and getting the data out. The reason I want to wait to get the data from Firebase is because I'm going to create a nice custom hook. The nice custom hook is going to be called use content, and that use content is going to pull out the series or the films, and we can just call that anywhere and we can basically pull out any sort of content. So that's going to be really cool, and I feel like that needs explaining, so I don't want to rush that just yet. We will be using Firebase context in there in our custom hook so we can consume the context and we can destructure out Firebase. Once we do that, then we can start looking at grabbing certain collections, certain documents, and yeah, but there we are. We've connected our application to Firebase. I'll most likely take a break here and then be back to finish this tomorrow, hopefully, and hopefully we should be getting somewhat close to finishing. Now, I don't want to scare you and say there's quite a lot to go, but you probably know better than I do because you're seeing the YouTube timestamp now as to how long this is. But we've got quite a few more components to create, and then of course we're going to be writing tests at the end. We've got things like the player, the profiles, loading states, React portals. So there's a fair amount to go right now, but I feel like we've got a good setup. We have pages, lib, fixtures, context even, and we've got style components and compound components. So we're in a good position to now start looking at how we can build out these sign in and sign up pages. Okay, so let's continue. If we go ahead and let's just make sure our sign in works, which is up at the top right of this page here, this red button. So as you can see, we get to the sign in page, so that's good. That means we've got some sort of interactivity going on within our application. You can navigate between pages, but we can't get back, and the reason we can't get back is because we haven't included the header. So if we look at the home page, you see how we've got header container. Let's just take that from there, go over to sign in, paste that up there, and then what we're going to do, we're going to get the header container, and then I believe we can just replace the p tags with the header container, and it should give us the header. So that's good, right? And pretty much what we got to do now is basically, actually we do need the footer on there as well. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So footer, container, auto import. Just be careful there because it's imported the footer and it did it automatically. I didn't type that out. And just make sure you got a fragment whilst we build this. And this is what your page should look like. So there we go. On the left we have the sign in. There's no content, but we need a form. So what does that require? Well, it requires a new component. So let's go ahead and create form. Once you have a form, you have to do the usual here, which is create a new file called index.js, and then styles, and then we can call this one form.js. So to begin, let's go ahead and do import React and say export default function form. It's going to take children, it's going to take the rest of the props. And then we want to return a container, as we always do, just to have a div to containerize our contents. So we'll spread the rest of the props on there, and then we'll pass the children in, like so. So we know we need container, because that's one that we've already specified. So we can put it there for now. We're going to need a title. Actually, you know what? I'm looking at the design, but I think it's probably best if we both look at this. Okay, so as you can see, it actually sits inside the header container, which is quite nice because then you get the background. So we're going to need some sort of container, which will be the container for the outside. Then you're going to need maybe another container here so we can get that nice transparency. And then you're going to need two input elements. You're going to need a button, you're going to need a title, you're going to need some text. So I think we can probably build this. Let's see. So, oh, I also have to think of edge cases as well, right? So what happens if we have an error? So let's just add that in there. So if we have an error, we can basically sort that out. We need a title. Let's go half and half. So we need a title, text, and then we say small text. And when the small text is going to be this small bit here, which as you can see, it's basically just stating about the recapture. And actually, let's call it text small. That makes more sense. And then we need a link, which is basically new to Netflix, sign up now. So we're going to make that a link. It's going to be a React router link. And then what would we need after a link? We're going to need two inputs, so we can just use one. We can reuse the input, and I think that's pretty much it, but we can always have a look. Oh, actually, this transparent base here, so let's call that base. It's going to be another div, but we're just going to call it base so we can have the transparency. And then, oh, it's auto formatted. Okay, so let's start off with form. Let's do the error. We'll say form.error function form error. Children, rest props, return error, and basically rest props children. More than likely you are used to this by now, how we just create these compound components like so. And then we can get the base like so. And what's next? Title, text, small. Okay. I'm just going to put the base there. I'm going to put it in the order that I import them just so I can keep track. So base, so I have the container, base, error. Next would be the title. Title. Text. Once we have the, so we have the text, we need the text small. Oh, text small, maybe I didn't get that one. And then we need some sort of link, which we're probably going to just pass into the style component, and it'll be a React router link. And I'm going to keep trying to say React router and not router, just so I can stick to my English roots. Link. What's next? Input. And then we need that red submit button. So we'll call it submit. Okay, that looks good. That's basically what I'm expecting. Whether it works or it doesn't, maybe we're 90% there. That's usually how I do it. I think about the design elements of the page. I realize we need input elements, buttons, small text, a title for sign in, some sort of transparent background. So I'm going to have to containerize that, and then the sign up now. So we're going to be doing the CSS bit, which I know for some people probably don't want to do. Let's set input style from style components, then macro. Then we're going to do input link as React. Oh, reach router link. Not React router. Then React router DOM. Cool. Then we need export const container equals style.div. After that, we need the error, which is basically just going to be an error message within, well, yeah, it's just going to be an error message with maybe some sort of different background, maybe red. We need base. What's next? Title. Did we have text? Yeah, we did. Okay, so we need these three next. So we can call the base, we'll call it title. And then we need text. The text can be, let's set P. Then text small, which is going to be P. And then we're going to need, what's next? Oh, the link. We need the link, that is important. So if you want to style a React router link, and this is the case for many different packages as well, we can just say link, and then as opposed to passing in a semantic element here, we can just say, hey, take in reach router link. And then let's just make it white for now. And I'm just going to add this one quick because I know I don't want any text decoration on there. And if you hover, just give me the text underline. Underline. Cool. And next we do need a input and submit, and those are the last two. So export const input equals style.input, and then we need a button, which will be the submit. Okay, so that looks good. If we hop over to the signin.js, there is, well, basically I want to test this now, right? Okay, let's just stop a second. Index.js is one thing we need to hop into because we have to add the form in here. So what I just did, I went into source components index, and our directory of components is basically like a phone book. You look up what you want, and then you can either use or call that particular person. And in this case, I want to expose form to the people who are looking at this directory or this phone book, and then they can use it. So that's pretty cool. And that's what we're going to do in here. So how do we do that? Well, we come in and set input form from components. And what's great about this form is we can use this on the sign in and sign up. So we have the header container. We have, I think we're going to need some state in here as well. So let's go into React and say use state. So why are we going to be doing that? Well, we want to be able to control the input elements. We don't want any uncontrolled elements. So let's start out by saying use state. We'll set email address, and then set email address. And then we expect a password. set password, and then we need to check if there's an error. And the error could be on sign up, whether it be a duplicate email or something else. And we can just leave that to empty because it's going to be a string. Now I also want to check that the form input elements are valid, so let's just leave a note, check form input elements are valid, email, and password. So I'm going to have some sort of function there where if you click, we then go ahead and check the event. Okay, so next, come down here, use form, and then form.title, sign in. Now, do we get the sign in? Ooh, we do. There it is. Cool. Let's see if you can hopefully see that. It's right over on the left side, but we're going to bring it in the center when we add the CSS. But let's just use what we have now, so our compound component, and we can start laying this page out. So we'll say if there's an error, then go ahead and do form.error and just pass in the error. And we can style that to look somewhat nice and somewhat of like a dangerous alert. Form.base, let's wrap everything in here so we can get the nice transparent background, and we do expect to have an on submit. So say once this gets submitted, handle sign in. Now this may be a form, I'm not too sure what we actually reference this as. Form.base, yes, it's just a function, but what did we use it for in here? I feel like it probably should be, oh, I used a div, it should be a form. So you can actually pass a form here as well because it's another semantic element. So if we have a method on here, because it's a form, we expect to pass a method. Let's do method equals post. And then form.input, and what we can do here, we can set placeholder, email address, value is going to be email address. Now on change, I want you to destructure out the target. And by destructuring out the target, it means that we don't have to do like the event dot blah 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 blah. So you can just destructure out that value immediately, and then you can get target.value. That's just personal preference. Do as you wish when it comes to passing this target. You can always get the event.target, that's fine. And we need another input as well. This one's going to be called password, 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 and then set password. And then since this is a password, I'm going to pass type password to this so it blurs it out. Next, I want to turn autocomplete off because it's a password form. Now I think it gets turned off automatically with the type password actually, but just for reassurance, I'm just going to hit that to off. Placeholder, password, that's fine. And then lastly, we need the form.submit. And it will be disabled, and we can pass a function in here. I'm just going to call it is valid. So if it's not valid, then basically don't allow them to submit. Sign in. So now I've passed a function in here. This is basically checking for a truthy value. So if it's disabled, you know, go ahead and disable this button. Oh, sorry, not is valid, is invalid. That should make sense. Yeah, that makes more sense. Now I've passed this in here. It's basically just returning. That indicates to me I need to create a function called is invalid and return true or false, because this disabled takes true or false. Likewise up here, check form elements are valid, email and password. So a nice way to do this is create a function inside this function here, so like an arrow function, and just say is invalid, and then say if password is equals to empty, or email address is equal empty. Then what we can do is invalid. We could probably do if it's not empty, but that's going to check, okay, is password empty? Okay, if it is, then is invalid would be true. If email address is empty, then is invalid would be true also. Now you can get more granular with this. You can go ahead and check that it's a valid, password in terms of, is it over 7 characters? Is the email address an actual email address? You can use regex and all this other, cool stuff. But do as you wish. I think that's just, it gets you started there. So then we can do const handle sign in. Now we can pass the event when we get a submission, and then just prevent default on that. And the reason we're preventing default is I don't want it to go ahead and post to this particular page. I want to do some magic. Firebase work here, so we need to check that. Handle sign in, just make sure down here, like I've got the red squiggly line, it's because the I was lowercase, and it actually happens to be that I uppercased it there. So let's go ahead now and basically style this. So this is gonna, again, don't get too bogged down on the fact that this is not a CSS tutorial as such, but you can kind of see the patterns in the fact that we're using a lot of flex just to lay our elements out. And then we can give it a background color. Now you can use RGBA, which allows you to set the opacity, which is nice. And we can say 7.5, so 000 is black, and then it's going to set it to 75%. And I want a nice border radius of 5 pixels. And if I hit save on that, hopefully we get the black transparent background. Yes, we do. So as you can see, that's quite a, it's too big. It doesn't match the design whatsoever. So we'll set box size in border box. I probably should have set that globally, to be honest, so then I don't have to type it out here. And max width 450, and that should put this particular element in the middle. And then just give it a nice margin bottom. So I see. Okay, perfect. So it's in the middle. Make sure you got pixels on here, px. Cool. So we have that. That's good. Now let's work on the error. Now the error. Actually, let's come back to the error. Actually, let's not. So the background will be E87C03. Border radius 4 pixels, font size 14, margin 0016 pixels, and then a color of white. Okay. So that should be the error. Now the error doesn't appear unless you cause an error, right? So I'm just going to say if there's no error, say I am an error, just so I can see that this works. There we are. That looks good. I think that looks pretty good. Let's put that back now. Undo, undo, undo. Okay, so base is, where is it? Where is it? There it is. So now let's make the form style look somewhat appropriate to what we're trying to achieve in terms of the clone of the Netflix form. And I think it's around maybe 430, 440. Let's try 450. And then 100. Cool, that looks good. So next would be the title. So the title is going to be the H1 at the top, which is the sign in right there. You see? That's what we're going to do now. So most of this stuff I have, most of the CSS, if you've ever used something like InVision, it'll give you the CSS values. And that's pretty much what I'm working on here. I'm just getting the CSS values and taking a good guess at some of them, but 90% of them I already know because I've worked with a design. Is this loading? Yeah, so it's gone white, which is good. But yeah, pretty much if you are a developer and you're worrying about do you have to remember all the CSS values, the answer is no. A lot of development teams just run off these tools like Abstract or InVision, and they just give you these pre-built designs, and most of them have CSS values. And basically what they say is go ahead and use these for your development, and then you don't have to guess because you have all the key values. line height normal. Okay. So I think we're pretty much done with that to some extent. No, we're not. I don't have the input. One thing I just spotted was I feel like we are missing some text. Why do we not have the... Oh, yes. So, but let's get the form.text in there. We'll say new to Netflix, form.link. And you remember how we used that React router link? Right at the top, we pulled this in, and then we went ahead and used this. Oh, why did I call it reach router actually? Just a second, everybody. Change this to React router. I called it reach router just because that's molded into my brain from the years of using reach router. Okay, so next, the form.link. We can pass to, and we can just say sign up. Sign up now. And then what we can do next, we can use form.text small. And then this page is protected by Google reCAPTCHA. So don't spam me, please. Just make that a little smaller. Okay, so we have the text now. It's time to finish up this input. We can do the input and submit now, and then we can move on to maybe some Firebase work, or we can start building the sign up as well, because the good thing about building reusable components, I know I can reuse this now on the sign up, and it's not going to take any sort of effort really. Color white, then we'll go with height 50 pixels. And just one more thing to point out, let me just give me a second. Margin bottom 20, last of type, which is going to be the last input, only 2. So say margin bottom 30 pixels. So if you're new to CSS, I do apologize that I haven't covered the CSS that much, but you see I give 30 pixels there as opposed to 20 here. Here I'm using, like, you'll see me using hex values, and then sometimes I'll just type, you know, white or black. I don't know if it's a bad habit, but they work pretty much the same. Whether there's performance cost between typing hashtag 000 or color black. I doubt there's any sort of performance implications, but who knows? I've never ever come across that. And then font size 16, we're nearly done now. I'm really excited to get onto the Firebase bit where we can start pulling data, because the initial setup of an application like this is generally getting the design in place, but what's good, it shows you how we can build reusable components within React, and we've got a little, or at least a small design library in here. And by the way, I'm targeting the disabled state here because it's going to be disabled. Wow, look at that, doesn't that look good? That does look good. So this is going to be disabled by default, and let me show you. It will be disabled actually by default. This is checking if is invalid. Now this actually should be empty, not empty, an empty string. So why would useState be an empty string? Well, we're expecting a string value, right? And we don't, well, yeah, we're expecting a string value being email address, we're expecting a string value being password. And you can see, once I type this in here, it goes red. So, ooh, this is now no longer invalid. So we've done some good work here. The next bit would be to actually use Firebase. Now we did wrap our application within Firebase as the provider at the top of the application. So what we can actually do, we can consume that from the context. So if I go ahead and, well, firstly we need use context. And then if I do input Firebase context from context, then Firebase, what I can do down here is I can basically say, hey, I know that Firebase lives in that context and I want to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and destructure out Firebase. Use context, and we just pass in the context we're expecting. Now, I've destructured out Firebase here. How did I know that? Well, if we go into the app, I believe it's the app. No, I'm wrong. Index. You see here, I pass in the Firebase value. Now, this object is actually at the top level. The objects must be Firebase, as in this is what I'm passing in. It's named Firebase. The values inside are more than likely just a bunch of objects that you can use. So we're going to destructure out Firebase, and once we do have Firebase, that's where we can handle the sign in. Now, we don't have any users, nor do we have authentication set up just yet, but it doesn't really matter because authentication is fairly easy to set up in Firebase, and we'll do it in just a second. But let's just do the boilerplate first. So this is how Firebase works for authentication. You can do firebase.auth. And then you can, I found Firebase really hard for authentication in terms of the documentation. So a lot of this stuff I had to guess. And I'm going to say sign in with email and password. And then you pass in email address and password. Now, this is a promise. So I have to go ahead and do then, and then push to the browse page, and that's still open. There's no authentication on the browse page, so you can access that directly. If there's any sort of error, then I want to get the error, and I want to set the email address to empty so we can get the state back to normal, set the password back to empty, set the error to error.message. So Firebase returns an error with a message. So this could be like, your email address and password do not match. Something as simple as that. And that's basically Firebase coming with the error. Now, you may be asking why I didn't take any sort of success value out of here. Well, I want to push to the browse page now. And if I use React Router to push, and the component hasn't cleaned itself up, you'll get an error saying, hey, you're trying to do some work and you have, this component has not mounted basically. So, and plus, why do we need to do any sort of, I don't know, any sort of work in there? We don't. We don't have to reset state. We don't have to do anything because we've had a successful call because we have ended up in the then. So what we want to do is go to import all as roots from constants, and we'll say roots. So when you come down here, if you have been successful, we want to route them to another page. So how do you do that? Well, you use a standard import from React Router DOM, which is called use history. Now, use history allows us to push to different pages on an action. So if the user is successful, we can use history and we can basically say, hey, your work here is done, go to this page, and it will fire them across to this page. And I'll show you how to do this. So they have custom hooks now, which is nice. React Router has custom hooks. So I can use history. I can come down here. I can say history.push routes or roots. I nearly broke that habit of saying routes and roots. Maybe by the end of this tutorial, who knows. Anyhow, let's test it. It's not going to work because we have no authentication, but let's see. The given sign-in provider is disabled for this Firebase project. Enable it in the Firebase console under the sign-in method of the auth section. I will do that right now. So come in here. There's two people on the left, little icon. It's called authentication. If you hover over, give that a tap. Then set up a sign-in method, this blue button right in the middle. Once you have that, go ahead, and there's different providers. This is what's really nice about Firebase. Now, I'm not too sure how many people use Firebase, but it's just so simple and it's just brilliant. Email password. This is the one we're going to be working with. So hit the little pencil on the right. Now it says allow users to sign up using their email and password. Our SDKs also provide email address verification, password recovery, and email change primitives. Email link. Do we want to send them an email link? Passwordless sign in. No. I'm just going to enable the top one. Enable the top one and hit save. Cool.